Hello and welcome to Frozen Synapse 2 Developer Diary number 32. I'm Ian Hardingham, designer and lead programmer on Frozen Synapse 2, and today we're going to remind ourselves why we're all here, show some new city updates, talk about some artificial intelligence, and answer a couple of questions in the mailbag. So let's go! Now we're going to start off with some very work in progress stuff that's been happening to the city. Now regular listeners will see some new stuff here. This is our lovely city, but we're currently adding a couple of things to it. We've got these icons that show building ownership, which are quite a big change, and again they're currently work in progress. And sort of possibly more importantly, we have these regions that are sort of somewhat like territory, but they're not really like that. They sort of designate the network control that different factions have over areas of the city that are near their buildings. It's quite a big part of the game to do with artifacts. Artifacts are the core driver of your progress through Frozen Synapse 2, and they can give you more shape control, what this is called, this sort of slightly territorial thing. You have full intel within your shape control. You have more fog of war effects inside other people's territory. Right now we are trying to get the areas to be clear without being too busy. So at the moment we've got some problems with the outlines not being really visible enough, and when you get areas, I mean, this is sort of alright. This sort of shows quite well that that shape security have control around this area of the city, but you can get some areas where everything gets a bit terrifyingly messy with lots of stuff next to each other, so we have to deal with that. But as usual, I'm not scared to show you guys stuff that's work in progress, so there's some work in progress stuff. I thought you guys might be interested to see the concept image that our graphics programmer James Urquhart has been working from, and this is from our artist Richard Whitelock. This shows so our process is we agree that we need to have some new effect in the city, and we give Rich the general spec for that. He works some stuff out, we go back and forth, and we end on something like this. This is kind of where we'd like to be in terms of these areas being quite clear but not really overwhelming the city. It's always quite a challenge to get from a really nice looking concept to getting everything in game. You've always got a lot more challenges. For instance, actually calculating the border of these regions gave me quite a headache yesterday, in terms of trying to find the right algorithm for working out what that should be. These areas have to follow the broad contours of city streets and buildings, and that's actually quite complicated, but I've got to a reasonable place there. We're currently trying to work out whether the outline should indeed be visible behind buildings as it is here. Sorry, I'm probably boring you guys to sleep. So anyway, I just thought you might be interested to see that. Now the next thing I want to talk about, something that I did about 6 weeks ago, but I realized I haven't done a developer video since, is actually the end of the mid game, or the main goal that you have in the city. So as regular listeners to this update know, the core thing that happens in a game of Frozen Synapse 2 is that you have this mysterious outside force called Sonata, who is making incursions into the city. You and the other big factions in the game race to try and get to these incursions, basically to farm them. First to kill Sonata's forces inside the city, but mainly to collect these relics, which really represent who has the most power within the city. These relics have useful stuff on their own. They give you quite a lot of income. They attract different mercenaries to sign with you, and they add to your ability to have more shape control around the city. But the entire sort of main way of in inverted commas winning the game, but you'll see why I put that in inverted commas in a minute, is to get a certain number of these artifacts. So without further ado, and with basically no help from assets that are in the game, I will tell you what happens when you or another major faction get control of Sonata by getting enough relics. Basically, the first team to get 8, or maybe it'll be a few more, maybe 12 relics, will be able to do what's called a Sonata action. And this basically signals the end of the mid-game and the start of the end game. And a lot of people will view that as having won for Synapse 2. There are several choices that you can make that will basically mean that you have won and the game ends. But with all games like this, a lot of people want to keep on playing forever, and there are lots of choices you can make for that too. So I'm just going to pretend that I have activated my 8th relic, and I am now able to take a Sonata action. Now, there are going to be 7 options here, at least. I only have 3 implemented right now. You can kill Sonata, which is one of the more straightforward things you can do. That obviously makes Blue Sunlight, who worship Sonata, extremely angry with you, and they will attack you. But in terms of end game choices, that's sort of one of the most relatively straightforward. You can attempt to merge with Sonata, which will give you some very interesting extra powers, and will also give you some interesting negatives that I'm not going to reveal right this second. You can attempt to control Sonata, which has a chance of going well and giving you a lot of extra power and giving you another faction on the map to control, or has a chance of going very badly and Sonata emerging onto the map and wreaking havoc. There are a few other ones that are not shown here. You can actually take Sonata and send them to the moon, which is kind of an aesthetic outcome. And there are a couple of fairly exciting ones as well. Now, you're the player and you have the option to do any of the 7 Sonata actions. But obviously each of the major factions, I'm just going to get rid of that screen now, each of the major factions has their own ideology and what they would like to do with Sonata. So Blue Sunlight, for instance, who worships them, wants to bring them forth and give them full power within the city. Safeguard wants to attempt to use them for their own military ends. I believe that it is Forgiven Geometry who very much want to merge with Sonata. So if one of the other major factions reaches this sort of proto-win condition first, they will take the action that they would like to take ideologically, and then that will have a big impact on the city, and the end game will be interesting and different then. So basically, even if you want to do something strange and play in a strange way that maybe doesn't involve collecting relics at all, maybe involves doing something else, maybe you just want to deliver parcels the entire time or something, this stuff is still running and it's still going to have a big and interesting impact on the game. So there you go. That's actually one of the final pieces of the puzzle in terms of the overarching gameplay of Frozen Synapse 2, and I would love to hear what you think in the comments. Now it's time for a little bit of in-game conversations, and because I love showing you things that are only half finished and broken, I can show you this mini-map. We have somewhat controversially set the maximum zoom distance for playing the game to be this. This is the comfortable level for planning, and certainly when I played the game and I was able to zoom out a bit further, I was finding I was caught with an annoying compromise between seeing as much as I wanted to see and having to keep zooming back in to plan effectively, or indeed trying to plan from a further out distance and it not working very well. So we had a lot of conversations about that, and finally decided that the best solution was to have a little bit of a lower zoom level with a mini map, which currently looks pretty hilariously broken, but I promise you will look lovely and blue and exciting within the next couple of weeks or so. So there's that. I don't have time to really show you all of the artificial intelligence work that I did for about a month after our last development update, but the AI is really a lot more exciting now. They will attempt to defend their faction leader. The faction leader may try and escape. Sometimes when they attack you, they will just try and steal your stuff and run away. They have a whole range of really, really interesting things they can do while they are having missions with you, and it really has had a dramatic impact on how fun this is to play. So for the beta testers, I really hope that when we get this new version out, which won't be too long, that'll be exciting. Now, as we can see, these little label store buildings have not disappeared in mission. That's something I have to fix. So there you go. That might be a bit controversial. If you want to make some complaints about that, please do. I read every single comment on the YouTube channel, and I think about stuff, and sometimes things change. Okay, and here we are at the mailbag. So a lot of comments on this video were about the one-turn scoring system that I was talking about last time. I'm not going to answer those now. I've been listening to all that feedback. I think a lot of people had some very good points on that, and definitely I have not quite nailed it yet. So thank you for that, but I'm going to respond to questions not to do with that right now. Pizza Boy 10 likes the idea of a special mercenary who can take more than one hit before he dies, which is a pretty big wow for stuff in FS where everyone's one hit kills. That would be pretty interesting. I don't think I would actually do that. That'd be very hard to implement and would cause some problems, but I have experimented with mercenaries who have sort of semi-stealth armor and are harder to aim at, which kind of has a similar kind of impact. Generally, one of the original pillars of Frozen Synapse design was one-hit kills on units, because I always really disliked RTSs or tactical games where you had a unit that had 25% health. I found that really, really annoying. I like sort of really clear-cut stuff. But anyway, thank you for the question. Life Barrier says, I think I see a Visual Studio icon. What language is this written in? It is based on a very modified version of the old Talk engine. So it is C++ with a scripting language called TalkScript, which is a string-only language, which I still like to use a lot, but does have lots of problems. And yes, we will have Linux and OS X support pretty much at launch, I believe. Edward Vikovanets, apologies if I've murdered your name, asks about custom matchmaking in multiplayer. So you want to have the same amount of control you'd have over a skirmish generator, but in multiplayer. So it's going to be a similar situation to the first game in that you can go into the advanced editor and create your own map and any number of any changes to turn length, turn limit, that kind of thing. And that's how you have deep control over the kind of game you're playing. You say that you didn't see that in the first game, so maybe there's something about that wasn't good enough. So do re-comment if there's something that wasn't there. But basically, the advanced sort of pseudo-level editor really is what allows you to have complete control over matches. Raymond Baker thinks that the Uzian pistol should have bullets instead of pictures of the guns to fit in with the themes, and I actually somewhat agree with that. I don't know if we're going to have time to do that relatively soon, but I do actually kind of agree with that. Nikolay Novikov asks about dates for public beta or next wave of closed beta, so I can talk a bit about this now. We're almost certainly going to be releasing an early access version of Frozen Synapse 2 through our own website, not through Steam, in December. It will come with Steam keys for when the game is released on Steam, but it will just be through our own website. We're looking at having some interesting tiers with that, maybe some physical stuff as well that you can buy. We'd like to start selling some of these games. That would be great. I don't know if we're going to have another wave of the closed beta. I've got a few people who've emailed me. I might bring them in to help with final testing in the next month or so. But things are really moving along. I am basically certain that you'll be able to get hold of this game in a pretty good form. It'll be pretty well polished for the first early access release in December. Okay, and that is it for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm gonna keep trying to do these every week, so I will hopefully be getting you another video next week. Give all of your comments, positive and negative, on the YouTube comments. I will read all of them. Thank you and goodbye.